Hmm. Okay, so hello and welcome to the first video. So the point of this video is to provide you with a little bit of context for the types of things that we're going to be talking about over the next two videos. So you may find a lot of this in this video to be a bit of a review, but I think that's okay because I'm hoping that you'll still find some benefit in seeing this stuff again. So let's get started. So, over the past couple of weeks, we've been primarily focusing on what the model of supply and demand is, and how to apply it to real world situations. But what we didn't do was try to derive in a rigorous fashion where the two components of this model came from. So basically, we just said, okay, well, there's a law of demand that states that as price increases, the quantity demanded of that good decreases. And that's what gives us a downward sloping demand function like here. And then we said, okay, well, there's a law of supply that says, okay, well, as the price of a good increases, the quantity supplied of that good by firms will also increase. And that's what gives us this upward sloping supply function here. But we didn't try to defend either of these laws in any sort of rigorous way. And so, what we're going to try to do over these next two videos is try to provide a bit more of a formal explanation for where these things come from. And in particular, we're going to focus on trying to defend the law of supply. So, what we'll try to do in these next two videos is um, provide an explanation for why it is we think that as the price of a good increases, the quantity supplied of that good will also increase. But to do that, we're going to have to um, find a more explicit way to talk about firms, and that means we're going to have to figure out number one what firms are, and number two how firms make decisions. So let's start with what firms are. And what firms are organizations of individuals that work to combine inputs to produce outputs. And so I drew a little bit of a flow chart here to kind of illustrate that concept. And so we have firms here in the center, and they're buying inputs from these markets over here, and they're combining the inputs that they purchase to produce an output that they then sell on this output market over here. And so, if you wanted to come up with a story to kind of go along with this flow chart, maybe you would think about these firms as being clay pot manufacturers. And so these clay pot manufacturers would be purchasing clay materials from this market, maybe. They'd be hiring workers from this market to form that clay into pots. And from this market, they might be, renting space to get a facility to house those workers while they make the pots. And so, they're buying these inputs and they're using them to create an output, which is clay pots. And then they sell that output here in the clay pot market. And so that's just sort of like, a little story to go along with this flow chart. But the basic idea is, like I said, that firms are these organizations that combine inputs to produce outputs. And so that's a very simple definition of what a firm is. And if you want more detail on real life firms and the way firms typically operate and the different types of firms that are out there, I would recommend checking out Dr. Hyman's chapter in his textbook, chapter 8, where he goes into a lot more detail than what we're going into here. But I think that just that simple definition is probably enough to get us started on this conversation, um, which um, which is that firms are organizations that combine inputs to produce outputs. So if we know what firms are, well, how do firms make decisions? And what we're going to assume for the rest of this conversation is that what firms want to do is that firms want to maximize profits. And here we define profits to be the difference between total revenue and total cost. And so, going back to that clay pot manufacturing firm, total revenue is what the firm earns by selling its pots on the clay pot market. And the total cost is the cost that it incurs by buying inputs on the input market. So this is so total revenue is the amount that the firm earns by selling its products on the output market. Total cost is the cost it incurs by buying inputs on the input market. And so the question is, well, how do firms decide how to maximize costs? Because if you're thinking about it again from the clay pot manufacturing firm, they can say, okay, well, I can sell more output, and at a given price, the more output I sell, the more revenue I'm going to earn. But at the same time, the more output I produce, the more costs I'm going to incur. So it's not exactly clear if you're a clay pot manufacturer how many pots you should produce if you want to maximize your profit. So to kind of get an idea for how firms make this decision, it probably helps to think back to a similar problem that we already talked about on the first day of class, which was how do individuals answer a similar question with regards to how much they should consume if they want to maximize their net benefits. And so you may recognize this example from the first day of class, where we say that we have an individual that's trying to decide how many scoops of ice cream he should consume if he wants to maximize his net benefits. And so this individual can consume anywhere from 0 to 5 scoops of ice cream. And we have a benefit schedule here for how much benefit he receives from consuming each scoop of ice cream. And we also have a total cost schedule here that says that for each scoop of ice cream, he's having to pay $3. And so if he buys one scoop, he has to pay a total of $3 because it's only one scoop, $6 because it's two scoops, 9 if he buys three, and onward. And so, given this information, how many scoops of ice cream should that person consume if he wants to maximize his net benefits? And if you remember from that first day of class, we decided that the way that a person would make this decision is using marginal analysis. And this is where they would set the marginal benefit equal to their marginal cost. So basically, they would consume ice cream scoops until the marginal benefit of that last ice cream scoop equaled the marginal cost of that ice cream scoop. And so real quickly, we can see that where this occurs is at 3 scoops. And because we can see this, because if he eats 1 scoop, he receives a benefit of $10, while he only incurs a cost of $3. So his benefit exceeds his cost. So he's definitely going to eat that first scoop. At 2 scoops, he receives a benefit of $5, but only pays $3 for that second scoop. So his benefit exceeds his cost, so he's definitely going to consume that second scoop. At his third scoop, his benefit just offsets the cost of eating that last scoop, so why not eat that third scoop? But if he goes beyond that third scoop, well, we see that the marginal benefit of that fourth scoop is less than the cost that he would incur if he were to buy that fourth scoop. So at that point, he's losing money, or basically losing benefit by consuming another scoop of ice cream because his benefit is lower than the cost. And so basically we'd say, okay, well, he definitely wouldn't consume that fourth scoop of ice cream, and he would just eat 3 scoops of ice cream. And, just to kind of bring that point home, I went ahead and calculated the net benefit over here, and we can see that his net benefit is maximized at 3 scoops. So trying to keep this in mind. So this is, again, a consumer's problem, but it should be, relatively clear that, maybe this would actually help us in analyzing the firm's problem. Because if we can kind of think about, firms and consumers as being sort of similar, then, maybe this would give us an indication of where to start on the firm's problem. So from the firm's perspective, how do we want to apply this marginal analysis way of decision making to the firm? So first off, we can just say, well, to the firm, the total benefit that they receive from producing output is the revenue that they earn from selling it on the output market. And the cost that they incur from producing that output, is again the cost that they incur from producing that output. So the total cost and the total benefit, the total cost and the total is is a much easier comparison here. So if we can kind of think about this in the same way as consumers, well, If with consumers we maximize net benefit where marginal benefit equals marginal cost, then it should, hopefully be intuitive that a firm would maximize profits where its marginal revenue or its marginal benefit is equal to its marginal costs. So keeping that in mind, well, how do we calculate the marginal revenue for a firm and its marginal cost? And that's what we're going to talk about over the next few videos. In particular, we're going to talk about where does this marginal cost term come from. To answer the question of how to calculate its marginal revenue, we'd have to go into a lot more about market structure and whether we're dealing with a firm that's operating in a perfectly competitive market versus a monopolistic market, which we're not going to do just yet. Let's first focus on where does this marginal cost term come from. And that's what we're going to start to do in the next video. So I look forward to seeing you over there in just a few moments. Talk to you soon.